They say the best surprises come when you least expect them. I'd been planning one for months, something that would remind my wife that she still mattered. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 36 years old. A construction foreman by trade. I build things: homes, offices, entire neighborhoods. But the one thing I'd spent the last 9 years trying to build was a marriage worth keeping. Laura and I, we weren't perfect. We used to be that couple everyone envied: young, laughing at inside jokes, staying up late eating takeout on the floor of our first apartment. She had this laugh that could pull me out of any bad day. I'd come home covered in dust and concrete, and she'd wrinkle her nose, kiss me anyway, and tell me I smelled like work and dreams. But lately, that laughter had faded. Her smile felt borrowed. Conversations turned into complaints about money, about time, about how everyone else was living life while we just existed. She'd scroll through her phone every night, showing me photos of other couples' tropical beaches, fancy dinners, matching smiles. I'd joke that we could barely afford dinner at Applebee's. But she didn't laugh anymore. She'd just sigh and go quiet. So I decided to fix it, to remind her that I was still the man she'd married. Every extra hour I worked, every overtime shift, every bonus check, I hid it away. Little by little, I saved enough to buy something big, something special: a 10-day Caribbean cruise, sunsets, cocktails, white sand, all the things she said we never did. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a reset button, proof that I still listened, that I still cared. I imagined the moment I'd hand her that envelope, the way her eyes would light up, the way she'd wrap her arms around me and say, "You still know me." That thought kept me going through the long shifts, the cold dinners, the silence that had settled between us. I believed this trip would bring us back. I thought I was rebuilding us. What I didn't know was that while I was planning a surprise for her, she had one waiting for me too. They say you can live with someone for years and still miss the moment they start to drift away. Maybe that's what happened to us. We were still under the same roof, but somehow, miles apart. It started small. Laura stopped asking how my day was. She'd sit on the couch, scrolling through her phone while I talked about concrete pours and deadlines. I'd trail off mid-sentence and she wouldn't even notice. Just keep tapping the screen, smiling at something that wasn't me. At first, I told myself it was harmless. Everyone zones out. Right, everyone needs a little escape. But there was something in the way she smiled, soft, secret, that didn't belong to me anymore. I worked longer hours after that, not because I wanted to be gone, but because I thought effort could fix distance. If I worked harder, made more money, it gave her something to look forward to. She'd see that I was trying. That's what men like me do. We fix things with our hands, with effort, with sweat. We don't talk about feelings. We just build something better and hope it holds. But the harder I worked, the more she seemed to slip away. Our dinners turned into silence, the kind that hums between two people who used to know each other. She'd sigh and push her food around the plate. "Do you ever get tired of this?" she asked one night. Of what I said. This. The routine. You. Me. This house. This small life. I laughed it off. Tried to make a joke, but it wasn't funny. Not to her. She wanted more excitement, attention, something shiny, and all I had to offer was steady, reliable, the kind of love that stays, not sparkles. Sometimes I'd catch her comparing us to others. "Did you see what the Hendersons posted? They just got back from Greece? 10-year anniversary trip." I'd nod, pretending it didn't sting. "I'm working on it." I'd tell her, "We'll have our turn," but she didn't believe me anymore. Her phone was always face down when I walked in, always charging, always locked. She'd laugh quietly at messages she never showed me, claiming they were from friends, old co-workers, her sister, and I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. At night, she'd fall asleep with her back turned to me, while I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering when we became strangers. Still, I held on to hope. I told myself this trip, the cruise, would change everything. That once she saw how hard I'd worked to make her dream come true, she'd come back to me. Every long shift, every sore muscle, every overtime hour I poured into that dream. But the irony, every time she accused me of caring more about work than her, she was right in one way. I was working for her, For us. For a version of us that maybe no longer existed. I remember one evening she came home late, said she'd met friends for drinks. Her perfume lingered longer than usual. Not the kind she wore for me. Something newer. Bolder. When I reached to kiss her goodnight, she turned her head. My lips brushed her cheek. And she said softly, "I'm tired." I stood there, staring at her back, trying to remember the last time we'd actually felt like husband and wife, instead of roommates waiting out a lease. She said she wanted adventure. I thought she meant beaches and sunsets. Turns out, she meant someone else. Friday afternoon, I left work early for the first time in months. The crew joked that I was finally taking a break, that maybe my wife had something special planned for me. I laughed and didn't correct them. The truth was, I was the one planning something special. I had everything ready: flowers in the passenger seat, cruise tickets tucked in an envelope right over my heart, 10 days in the Caribbean, sunsets, beaches, second chances. It was supposed to be the start of something new. The drive home felt lighter than usual. I remember catching myself humming along to the radio, something I hadn't done in a long time. For a moment, I felt hopeful, but that feeling didn't last. When I turned onto our street, I saw a black BMW parked in our driveway. New, shiny, tinted windows. Not ours. Not anyone's I recognized. I slowed down, pulled to the curb, engine running. Laura didn't have friends who drove cars like that. None that I knew of. Anyway, for a minute, I sat there, trying to come up with reasonable explanations. Maybe a delivery guy, maybe a neighbor stopping by, but the engine was still warm. The driver was still inside my house. My stomach sank. The kind of heaviness you feel before a storm breaks. I parked down the street, grabbed the flowers, took a deep breath, told myself I was overreacting, but as I walked up the driveway, I could feel it, that quiet wrongness. Like the air itself knew something I didn't. The front door was unlocked. It always was. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. No TV. No music. No footsteps. Just stillness. Then I saw it. Her summer dress, the yellow one with small white flowers draped carelessly over the arm of the couch. A man's shirt on the floor, shoes kicked off near the stairs. My heart started pounding. Not fast, heavy. Slow. Like it was preparing for impact. I set the flowers down on the kitchen counter, next to the wine I'd bought for us, and I just listened. At first, nothing. Then faint sounds, soft, muffled. The kind of sound you can't mistake once you've heard it. I followed them, step by step, up the stairs we'd climbed together 1,000 times. My hand brushed the railing, the same one I'd sanded and stained myself. I'd built that staircase with care, never knowing it would lead me to the worst moment of my life. As I reached the landing, the sounds grew louder. A rhythm. Breathing. A woman's voice I knew better than my own. Something in me split right down the middle. Part of me wanted to turn around and run. The other part needed to see it, needed proof that this nightmare was real. I pushed the bedroom door open. It wasn't even locked. Just cracked. Like they didn't have a reason to hide. Through that narrow gap, I saw everything. Laura, my wife, completely naked, with a man I'd never seen before, tall, fit, expensive watch still on his wrist. They were so lost in each other. They didn't even notice me. That's the part that broke me the most, not the act, but the indifference. The way they existed in a world that didn't include me at all. I stood there for what felt like forever, frozen, watching my entire marriage collapse in silence. 8 years of trust, promises, laughter gone in seconds. And in that silence, something inside me changed. It wasn't rage, not at first. It was clarity. Cold. Calm. Absolute. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just knew from that moment on, I'd never be the same man again. People say heartbreak destroys you, but they're wrong. Some moments don't just break you, they remake you. That day, something in me died, and something else woke up. Something harder, sharper. The part of me that stopped asking why and started deciding what comes next. I used to think anger was loud fists through walls, shouting until your throat burns. But real anger, the kind that comes from betrayal, it's quiet. It's measured. It doesn't shake. It decides. I stepped back from that bedroom door. Every sound behind it, searing itself into my mind, the whispers, the rhythm, her voice saying things she hadn't said to me in months. That was all the proof I needed. But proof wasn't enough. Not this time. I walked downstairs and found my phone on the counter, next to the flowers and the wine that suddenly looked ridiculous. I opened the camera app, hit record, and set it on the hallway table, aimed right at the stairs. If I was about to lose everything, I wanted the truth to outlive the lies. Then I walked back up those stairs. Slow, deliberate. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a countdown. When I reached the door, I didn't pause. I kicked it open, hard. The door slammed against the wall with a sound that froze them both mid-motion. Laura screamed, scrambling for the sheet, eyes wide, voice trembling. The man, whoever he was, tried to stammer something, but the words never came out. I didn't shout, didn't swear. I just stood there, breathing evenly, the silence stretching so tight it could break. Then I said, calm as concrete, congratulations. You finally got your adventure. He blinked, confused, chest heaving. Listen. Man, I cut him off by moving closer, my voice low and cold. You ever step foot in this house again, you won't walk out. He tried to grab his clothes from the floor. I grabbed his wrist instead hard. He winced. Okay. I'm going. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Get up, I said. He froze. Both of you. Laura clutched the blanket around her like it could hide what she'd done. Ethan. Please, she whispered. Just let me explain. Explain, I said, my voice still steady. Explain what? That while I was breaking my back to give you everything you asked for, you were giving yourself to someone else. She started crying. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe fear, maybe both. I didn't care. Get up. I dragged the blanket off her and tossed it aside. They both scrambled to cover themselves. But I was already walking toward the stairs. Move, I said over my shoulder. They followed, hesitating, pleading, stammering. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see their faces anymore. When we reached the bottom, I unlocked the front door and threw it open. Daylight flooded in, sharp, unforgiving. I turned to them one last time. You want excitement, I said quietly. Here it is. Then I shoved them both out the door. Bare. Exposed. In the middle of the afternoon, the man stumbled across the driveway, grabbing for his clothes. Laura screamed my name. But I didn't move. I watched them scramble in the sunlight, their panic echoing across the neighborhood. Curtains shifted in nearby windows. A dog barked. People saw. Good. Let them see. Let the truth speak louder than gossip ever could. The man dove into his BMW, started it with shaking hands. As he reversed, I picked up one of his shoes from the porch and hurled it at the hood. It bounced off with a thud, leaving a small dent, a mark, like the one he'd left on my life. When he sped away, I closed the door slowly, locked it, and turned the deadbolt. Laura was still outside, pounding on the door, sobbing, begging. Ethan. Please, I'm sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Please. Just let me explain. Her voice cracked on every word. I leaned against the door, eyes closed, listening to her cry through the wood. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of whiskey 3 fingers worth, and sat down at the table. The flowers were already wilting, the envelope with the cruise tickets still unopened. I stared at it for a long time. 8 years of marriage in that envelope, everything I thought I was saving, everything I believed in, and it all led to this moment, me, alone, in silence that finally told the truth. Outside, her sobs grew louder, then softer, then stopped. She tried the door handle, then the back door, then nothing. I took a sip of whiskey and let it burn. It tasted like endings. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth was louder than anything I could have said, and for the first time in months, the house was quiet, peaceful, almost clean. I sat there until the sun went down. Glass empty, the echo of her crying fading into memory, and I realized something simple, something final. When someone shatters your world, you don't always have to shout to make things right. Sometimes silence and exposure are the loudest justice there is. They say time heals everything, but the night after betrayal, time doesn't heal. It hardens. I didn't sleep. Not for a second. I sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up. staring at that envelope of cruise tickets, thinking how close I'd come to being the fool of the decade. By the time dawn hit, I'd made a decision, one that didn't come from rage, but from clarity. I wasn't going to scream, beg, or chase. I was going to end this properly. The next morning, I showered, shaved, put on my best work shirt, and drove to the law office downtown. Didn't call ahead, didn't make an appointment. I just walked in with my phone in hand. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" "No," I said quietly. "But I have proof." Maybe it was the look in my eyes. Maybe the way I said it. Either way. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from a man named Richard Hale. Divorce attorney. Silver hair. Calm. The kind of man who's seen every kind of heartbreak you can imagine. He leaned back in his chair. "So, Mr. Walker, what brings you here today?" I didn't answer. I just unlocked my phone, set it on his desk, and pressed play. The video spoke for itself. No need for narration. No commentary. Just betrayal, clear, raw, undeniable. When it ended, the room was silent. He took off his glasses, exhaled slowly, and said, "You'll lose nothing. She'll lose everything." I nodded once. "Good. Start today." He looked at me with something like respect. "I'll need a retainer and your marriage records. You'll have both by noon." And he did. By lunchtime, the paperwork was moving. Proof of adultery meant no spousal support. No contested property. The house. The accounts. The assets, all mine. Laura had destroyed her marriage with her choices, and I was simply letting the law make it official. That afternoon, I came home to find her parents' car in the driveway. I knew what was coming. Righteous anger, tears, accusations. Her father, Frank, was red-faced the moment I opened the door. "You threw our daughter out naked into the street," he shouted. "What kind of man does that?" I didn't respond. I just walked to the dining table, opened my laptop, and pressed play on the same video I'd shown the lawyer. Within 30 seconds, the house went quiet. Frank's face drained of color. Her mother, Linda, covered her mouth with both hands. They watched their daughter's betrayal unfold in perfect, merciless clarity. When it was over, I closed the laptop. "That's the kind of woman your daughter really is," I said. Frank opened his mouth, but no words came out. His anger had nowhere left to go. Linda was crying not for Laura's humiliation, but for the shame of what she'd done. "I'm filing for divorce," I said simply. "She gets nothing. The house. The savings all stay with me. She can live with the consequences she created." Linda's voice was small, broken. "Where is she supposed to go?" I looked at her. "Home. That's not my problem anymore." They left without another word. Frank's shoulders slumped in defeat. Linda still crying silently. And when the door shut behind them, I felt something lift off my chest, like I'd just closed the final chapter of a story I never meant to be in. The legal process moved fast. The lawyer was efficient. The evidence was airtight. Laura's attorney, a public defender, since she couldn't afford better, advised her not to fight. There was no point. Within weeks, the settlement was signed. I kept the house, the car, every cent in the joint account. She walked away with her clothes and nothing else. When the final papers arrived, I poured myself a drink, sat by the window, and watched the sun go down over the quiet street. For the first time in months, my hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. They say revenge is wrong. Maybe. But sometimes justice wears the same face. And that day, justice had mine. Justice doesn't always arrive with flashing lights or raised voices. Sometimes it walks in quietly and takes everything away piece by piece. After the divorce papers were signed, Laura disappeared from my life completely. No calls, no visits, no apologies. And that was fine by me. I didn't need words from her. I had the truth. In a town like ours, secrets don't stay buried long. People talk. Neighbors talk. By the end of the week, everyone knew. They knew what she'd done. They knew how it ended. The woman who used to host book clubs and post perfect Instagram photos of her happy marriage was now the headline of every whispered conversation at the grocery store. Laura lost her job within a month. Her manager said it was because of downsizing. But everyone knew the real reason. A scandal like hers makes people uncomfortable. especially in small towns. Coworkers stopped making eye contact. Friends stopped returning calls. She became the woman people pitied from a distance but never invited anywhere. Her parents didn't take her back. Her father couldn't even look at her. Her mother cried every time her name came up. The kind of crying that comes from disappointment, not sympathy. So Laura bounced between friends' couches, staying just long enough to wear out her welcome. Eventually, even the friends who once cheered her on for being independent realized what she really was: careless, selfish, entitled, the man she'd risked everything for. He didn't fare much better. His name was Adam Pierce, a car dealership manager with a wife, 2 kids, and a reputation for being the charming type. After that day, word spread faster than he could stop it. His wife found out, filed for divorce within a week. He lost his family, his home, and eventually his job. Rumor had it he'd been hospitalized for a while: cracked ribs, fractured hand, consequences of being in the wrong place with the wrong woman. He moved out of town shortly after, limping into the next chapter of his ruined life. As for Laura, she tried to rebuild, took a job at a department store for minimum wage, rode the bus to work every day. No car, no home, no dignity left to cling to. Sometimes, she'd see mutual friends in passing. They'd smile politely, then hurry away. No one wanted to stand too close to the fire that used to be her life. She tried dating again. Or so I heard. But word gets around. Men Googled her name, found the divorce records, saw the scandal in public court documents. They'd pull away fast. In the age of the internet, reputation is permanent, and hers was beyond repair. Meanwhile, I kept my head down, worked my shifts, paid my bills, lived quietly. No contact, no messages, no second chances. The past had done enough talking. Every once in a while, I'd hear updates through people I didn't even ask: neighbors, co-workers, friends of friends. She's working retail again. She's staying with a friend. She looks different. I'd just nod and say, yeah, because I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance. She'd spent years saying she wanted adventure, excitement, something more. And she got it, just not the kind she imagined. I didn't have to destroy her life. She did that herself. I just stopped saving her from the consequences. And that was the moment I realized, peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from walking away while the fire burns itself out. 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it did that Friday afternoon. The chaos was gone. The noise. The second guessing. In its place, peace. Work became my therapy. I took every shift, every challenge, every promotion that came my way. By winter, I'd been made senior foreman, 40 men under my command, 2 housing projects running at once, the kind of position I used to dream about. Back when I thought success meant making someone else happy. Now, I worked for me. The house, my house, was unrecognizable. Fresh paint, new floors, new furniture, every trace of her, gone. No perfume lingering in the air. No framed photos that twisted my gut. I rebuilt it the same way I rebuilt myself: stronger, cleaner, grounded in purpose. Mornings started with black coffee and silence. Evenings ended with a glass of whiskey and satisfaction that didn't depend on anyone else. I'd turned the guest room into a home gym. Worked out every morning before sunrise. The guys at work joked that I looked 10 years younger. Maybe I did. Because stress and betrayal age a man faster than time ever could. I dated a little, nothing serious. Grabbed dinner with women who laughed easy and left before things got complicated. I told them the truth. I wasn't looking for forever. Just honesty. Most respected that. Some even admired it. But for the first time, I didn't need anyone's validation. One evening, I opened the closet to grab a jacket. And there it was, the old baseball bat, leaning quietly in the corner, untouched since that day. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a reminder that I'd once reached a breaking point and survived. That I'd found out the hard way what happens when you let someone else define your worth. Some weapons you only need once, but they remind you never hand over your dignity again, and I didn't. Not to anyone. A year ago, I was driving home with flowers on the seat beside me, thinking a surprise trip could fix a broken marriage. Back then, I believed love could outwork betrayal. That effort could replace respect. I thought if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, forgave enough, she'd finally see my worth. But peace doesn't come from fixing someone else. It comes from choosing yourself. Now, my evenings are quiet. I pour a glass of whiskey, sit by the window, and watch the sun go down over the same house that once felt like a battlefield. Only this time, it's mine, every wall, every inch of silence. Earned the hard way. I don't think about her much anymore. Not with anger, not with regret, just clarity. She gave me a lesson I couldn't have learned any other way, that forgiveness isn't peace, self-respect is. That when someone shows you who they are, you don't argue with it, you believe them. And then you move on. I'm not the same man I was that day. Back then, I was trying to buy her happiness. Now, I'm building mine brick by brick, decision by decision. I've learned that peace isn't something you find in another person. It's something you build inside yourself and protect at all costs. So, let me ask you, brothers, if you were me, would you have forgiven her? Or done what I did? Walk away and rebuild in peace? Tell me below. And remember, dignity isn't revenge. It's survival.